Hi, I'm Mary Cagle, and today we're going to talk about should we still tithe. To understand why we should still tithe today and why is it important. We need people to tithe on a regular basis. That's what funds our churches, builds our churches, pays our staff, our pastors, and mission projects. Now my question today is, are we robbing God? That's a pretty big question because, you know, it's very scary to think, are we robbing God? But in the Bible, the book Malachi, chapter 3, verse 9, says if you're not tithing like you should, you are robbing God. As a church member, the question of tithing is a question that we don't speak of a whole lot. We don't get a lot of preaching on how we should tithe. It's very confusing to some church members of how should I do it? What should I do? Am I going to be punished if I skip a week and if I don't tithe? What's going to happen to me? You know, it's a lot of questions, and it's very confusing sometimes. But in doing this speech, I've done quite a bit of research about tithing, and I'd like to share with you why I think it's important that we do still tithe today. Number one, our church. Like I mentioned earlier, our church is completely supported by the members who pay their tithes. Our salaries of our preachers, our secretaries, our youth minister, even the man that keeps the yard up is all paid by our tithes. We don't get money from the government, the city, the state. We're not funded in any means except people who come to church and pay their tithes. We need to buy supplies for our Sunday school rooms, our Sunday school books, stuff that we use out of the kitchens, janitorial supplies, anything that we do. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes on in this church that we don't even know about. Everything costs money. The money has to come from members of our church. We work in missions. We're funded through, our budget is funded in missions. We do some missions to where we help send people overseas as missionaries. We do more local missions sometimes, like Reach Texas. That usually isn't coming out of our tithes. That's coming out of an offering, which is given a little bit more than your tithe. Still have to give the tithe, but we require a little bit more sometimes. Our church, and I'm using our church as an example because that's what I'm familiar with, we have some local outreaches that we're very, very proud of. Our food pantry is one of them. We give money to our food pantry in offerings. That doesn't come out of our money that we tithe to support our church. That's solely based on our members giving money. We pack between 80 and 120 bags every month and give them out in this church. That's people coming up here and working, giving their time, and giving their money to make this happen. Another one that we have is Operation Christmas Child. Operation Christmas Child is, I call it our local ministry because our church itself packs about 2,000 boxes a year and sends to the huge processing center that we have. I call it local because we have to have the offerings of our church members, again, people working and giving their time and their money to support packing, filling 2,000 boxes. Now these boxes go to a bigger processing center, but our tithe supports a mission line budget that helps pay some of us to be able to go to these processing centers and help process some of these shoe boxes. There's over 1 million shoe boxes that goes out in this world that reaches more families than we could ever imagine. It's a wonderful, wonderful mission that we have. Another one of our missions is a vacation Bible school. And that's known everywhere. Almost every church has vacation Bible school. But we do it here, and that is paid through our tithes. We have it in our budget to pay, buy supplies, and do a vacation Bible school for all the neighborhood kids. We need to tell these kids about the gospel, and this is the way that we get it out. None of this could be possible if you didn't pay your tithes on a regular basis. Now, there's some controversy A lot of people don't know. The Old Testament, and you have to look in the Bible for these verses, but I've got some verses up here. The Old Testament has very strict laws on how you should tithe. It's black and white. It tells you exactly what you're to do. You're to tithe on the first 10% of your income. It may not be money. It may be livestock, crops, whatever it is that your income was during the years of the Old Testament. The New Testament, I've got several verses here. It tells you to give. It tells you to give, and it tells you to give freely, generously. The controversy is that they don't think that you should still tithe in the New Testament. The New Testament tells you to give your money. It's all the same. Give. So we still need that money. Now that's according, I found a lot of information about this in an article I read, to tithe or not to tithe. But we have to make that decision on our own. But one thing that we need to remember is being obedient to God. Obedience is what it's all about. We're to trust in God, read His Word, study His Word. We need to be obedient to what He tells us to do. And as I just showed you, we have evidence out of both Testaments that we're supposed to do this. You will reap blessings through your obedience. God promises to bless you so that we can be more generous than we ever thought possible. Giving is the best thing, the best feeling that you can have. I had the pleasure of being in Sunday school this morning in Children's Church. And we were working on Operation Christmas Child shoeboxes. The kids were filling the shoeboxes. But they were making things to put in the shoeboxes. They were the happiest little kids making stuff knowing they were going to give it to somebody else. It was a joy to them. A lot of people say, I can't do it. I can't tithe. I don't have the money. It's not in my budget. I can't survive if I tithe. Well, according to Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace book, if you cannot live off of 90% of your income, you won't be able to live off of 100%. And in our 30-day challenge book that we're going through right now, it states in there that everybody tithes. Whether you write that check to the church every week or every month as your first 10%, you're going to write it somewhere else. The grocery store's going to get it. Your utility bills are going to get it. Your house payment, car payment, somebody's going to get that 10%. Everybody tithes. You might not just know that you were, but you do. Giving a tithe or something else, giving a tithe to someone or something else other than God is the question I asked you to begin with. Are you robbing God? Because if it goes somewhere else and not to God, then the answer to that question is yes. You are robbing God. Everything belongs to God. God created everything in this world. He gives you 100% of your income, and He just asks you to give Him 10% back to support His church. It's not much to ask when it all belongs to Him to begin with. According to an article, does a Christian still need a tithe? Well, with my research, yes. It's very important for our churches today, and you still need to tithe. But the thing is, like being saved, it's your choice. He's not going to reach out and tell you have to. You have to pray about it. You have to study the Bible about it. And you have to know that it's the right thing to do. Because tithing without love or obedience to God amounts to nothing more than a meaningless ritual. I appreciate y'all all so much for being here tonight. Thank you.